First they laughed, then they went quiet. Then one day, without a word, without an apology, without even meeting your eyes, they started living the exact life they once mocked you for wanting. And somehow, inexplicably, you were the one left feeling confused, maybe even guilty, as if your vindication was something you should hide, as if being right all along was somehow impolite. This video is for you, for the one who was told they were wrong before they were proven right, for the one who moved in silence while others moved in mockery. Stay until the end, because what Socrates understood about this 2,400 years ago will change the way you see every person who ever doubted you. 1. The day they laughed. Let's start with the truth no one wants to admit out loud. When someone mocks your dream, your style, your decision, your path, they are not offering you criticism. They are offering you a confession of their own paralysis. Think about it carefully. A person who is genuinely secure in their own direction has no psychological need to stop and comment on yours. The architect who is deeply engaged in building his own house does not stand at the fence, mocking the neighbor's blueprint. Only the man with no blueprint of his own has that kind of time. Mockery is never really about you. It is about the unbearable gap between where they are and where they secretly wish they could go. This is not a modern psychological discovery. Socrates, the man who walked barefoot through Athens, who owned almost nothing, who refused every comfortable compromise, knew this dynamic intimately. His entire life was a masterclass in being misunderstood before being proven right. The citizens of Athens called him a corrupter of youth. They called his method of questioning dangerous, arrogant, and absurd. They put him on trial. They sentenced him to death. And yet today, 24 centuries later, the entire foundation of Western philosophy, of critical thinking, of the scientific method, of every university on Earth bears the fingerprints of the man they laughed at. They didn't just copy him, they built civilizations on what they once tried to bury. 2. The psychology of the copycat critic. Now let's go deeper, because understanding why they copy you after criticizing you is not just intellectually satisfying, it is psychologically liberating. When a person encounters something unfamiliar, a lifestyle, an ambition, an aesthetic, a choice, the human brain does something automatic and largely unconscious. It runs a threat assessment. Is this dangerous to me? Does this challenge my identity? Does this expose a gap between who I am and who I could have been? For a psychologically secure person, the answer to all three is no, and they move on with quiet admiration or neutral indifference. But for a person trapped in stagnation, trapped in the gap between their potential and their reality, the encounter with your vision is not neutral. It is destabilizing. Your dream holds up a mirror, and they do not like what they see. So they do what frightened people have always done. They attack the mirror. They call it ugly. They call it unrealistic. They call it foolish. Because if they can convince themselves and everyone around them that your path is wrong, then their own inaction becomes not cowardice, but wisdom. This is what Socrates meant when he said that the unexamined life is not worth living. The people who mocked you were running from self-examination. Your very existence forced them toward it, and they hated you for it. 3. The silence before the copy. There is a particular kind of silence that comes after the mockery ends. You may have noticed it. The jokes stop. The comments disappear. They go quiet, not because they've forgotten you, but because something has shifted inside them. They watched, they waited, and slowly, painfully, they realized you were not going to fail the way they predicted. They realized the thing they called foolish was beginning to look like foresight. The thing they called unrealistic was becoming real. And now, they face the most uncomfortable psychological position a human being can occupy: being wrong about someone they publicly dismissed. The deepest cuts don't come from the swords of our enemies. They come from the silence of people who realize they misjudged us, and choose pride over apology. Because here is the brutal truth about human ego. Most people would rather quietly imitate you than openly acknowledge they were wrong about you. Admission costs too much. Imitation costs nothing, and it closes the gap they spent years pretending didn't exist. So they adopt your style without crediting it. They pursue your kind of path without referencing it. They begin living pieces of the life they once called laughable, and they do it as if it were their own idea, their own evolution, their own independent arrival. And you, watching from a distance, feel something strange, something that is partly satisfaction, partly grief, and partly a question you don't know how to ask out loud. 4. Why you were always ahead. Here is what I need you to understand, not as flattery, as fact. The people who are mocked earliest are almost always the people who are right earliest. Socrates was sentenced before he was canonized. Galileo was imprisoned before heliocentrism became elementary school science. Every artist whose work now sells for millions was told their vision was worthless by people who are now forgotten. The pattern is ancient, and it is consistent. The further ahead you see, the more alone you are in that seeing. And the more alone you are in that seeing, the more threatening your clarity becomes to those still standing in the fog. You were not mocked because you were wrong. You were mocked because you were early. There is a psychological concept called the innovation adoption curve. Every new idea, whether it is a technology, a philosophy, or simply a way of living, is first rejected by the majority, then tolerated, then adopted, then celebrated. The people at the very front of that curve are called pioneers. But in the moment they are simply called strange. You were called strange. That was never an insult. It was an address. It told you exactly where you were standing on the map. 5. What Socrates would tell you now. In his final hours, Socrates had every opportunity to escape. His friends had bribed the prison guards. The door was open. He could have walked away from the death sentence and continued his life in exile. He refused, not because he was indifferent to life, but because he understood something that most people never grasp, that the opinion of those who misunderstand you has no power over the truth of what you are. He said, "I am not afraid of death. I am afraid of doing something unworthy of a man of good character." He did not spend his final hours defending himself to his critics. He did not write letters of justification to those who condemned him. He sat with his closest friends, drank hemlock with steady hands, and spoke calmly about the nature of the soul. Because the imitation of the mediocre is not vindication enough to die angry about, and their mockery was never significant enough to live afraid of. This is the lesson: not to feel superior, not to gloat, but to understand, at the deepest possible level, that the trajectory of your life was never in their hands. It was always only in yours. 6. The Manifesto. How to carry this knowledge. So now that you understand what happened and why, here are the rules Socrates would have given you. Not for revenge, for architecture, for building a mind that cannot be destabilized by the opinions of people who will one day silently copy what they once openly mocked. Rule 1. Never shrink your vision to fit their comprehension. Confusion and mockery are the early symptoms of disruption. Rule 2. Never explain yourself to critics. Clarity is for people who are ready for it. Rule 3. Do not wait for the apology. It will come in the form of imitation. Accept it as the only apology their ego is capable of offering. Rule 4. Let the copy be your receipt. Not a theft, a timestamp, proof of what you saw first. Rule 5. Move forward without bitterness. They were wrong then. They have proven it now. Carry it lightly. Rule 6. Protect your next vision. The same people who copied the last one are already positioned to mock the next. Expect the cycle. Socrates was not remembered because he was liked or understood in his time. He was remembered because he was unmoved. And you, the one who was told you were wrong before you were proven right, you carry that same capacity, because the person who sees clearly, moves quietly, and builds anyway is not waiting for their critics to catch up. They are already somewhere those critics haven't even thought to look yet. The examined life begins here.